My husband read the back of the book and he says, "Did you know they wrote on the back of your book, survivor of sexual abuse?" I'm like, "Yeah, honey, I write about it in the book. Maybe you should read it." And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you're really going to tell everybody about that? And everybody's going to know?" And then, of course, I start thinking, "Oh my gosh, all the PTA moms are going to know. Like everybody's going to know my biggest, darkest secrets." I mean, I've heard this phrase before and it really hits home that we are only as sick as our secrets. When I got into acceptance for even things that had happened to me, it's like they lost the control. It doesn't mean that I'm letting them define me.
Mm-hmm.
It just shows me that, oh, well, yes, this happened, but there are things that I can do that doesn't mean I have to walk in shame for the rest of my life.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. And this is a very special episode because the person that I am interviewing, Amberly Lago, really has a tale to tell, like a phenomenal tale of overcoming super traumatic experiences. And really, she's become a peak performance coach, a TEDx speaker, podcaster, and she really has become one of the leading experts in the field of resiliency and transformation. She wrote a book called True Grit and Grace. We talked about all the things from her horrendous accident to where they thought they were going to have to amputate her leg. You might have seen her. She's done a lot of TV around this. But I really love her message because it really is about how all of us can build that resiliency muscle, sort of one step at a time. We talk about her getting sober. We talk about overcoming sexual abuse. And I hope that this interview leaves you as inspired as it left me. Please enjoy. I am super excited to welcome Amberly Lago to the Terri Cole Show. Amberly, hi.
Hi, I am so excited to see you. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. I love your show, and I actually love binging all your posts on Instagram too.
Why, thank you. You and I have been circling each other on social media for a while, like just supporting each other's work and all of that. Once I really dove into what your experiences have been, I was talking about it a little bit at the upfront of the show, but I really want to hear from you. So imagine that people in my audience don't know anything about True Grit and Grace, right? So you wrote a lovely book that's done incredibly well, but can you please just share with us the experience that brought you to writing that book and doing what you're doing in life right now? Because it was pretty traumatic.
Well, thank you. It has been a wild ride, a crazy journey. I mean, 5 years ago, I didn't even own a computer. Like, imagine that. I had this dream of writing a book though, because I thought this experience and everything that I've gone through couldn't have just happened for no reason. If I can write this book called True Grit and Grace to with the intention of helping one person, then I can turn pain to purpose. And so I
Mhm.
had a lot of people that were saying, "Oh, you're crazy. You're the fitness girl. You need to stick to fitness. You don't own a computer. You don't have a college education. Who do you think you are?" And I mean, my inner critic was, and I can be really mean to myself and some of the things that I tell myself. But I
Mhm.
kept thinking about who I wanted to serve and thinking about maybe that one person out there that was going through some hopeless times or challenges. And, I was in the fitness industry for 26 years. I had a successful business. I was sponsored by Nike. I loved what I did. And it took a long time to build that business. I started out as a single mom and built that business up, and I employed several other trainers,
Mhm.
and that all changed in the blink of an eye when I was coming home from work one day on my motorcycle and this SUV shot out of a parking lot and I got T-boned. So I was hit, thrown 30 feet, slid across Ventura Boulevard. So this was in California. When I finally came to a stop, I looked down at my leg and it was just crumbled into pieces. And I only looked down at it once. And then I grabbed onto it and really for fear that it was going to fall off. And
Wow.
it's crazy what goes through your mind because one of my first thoughts was, wow, this can't be good. I might have to train clients on crutches for a while. So that was already like my default. Like, what am I going to do next? I had no idea how drastically this was going to change my life. And little did I know either that my femoral artery was severed. And I swear I had a guardian angel because this man came over to me, took his belt off, made a tourniquet around my leg, and he saved my life. There were paramedics that were down the street. They didn't even get the call yet before they grabbed their bags and were running towards me. And so I feel like because I had this guardian angel, because paramedics were so close, I was rushed to the hospital. I was bleeding out. The pain was unbearable. My organs were shutting down. And so this beautiful nurse leaned over me and she said, "We're going to give you something to make you feel all better now." And that was the last thing that I remembered before they put me in induced coma. I came out of a coma like arms flailing, trying to rip the tubes out of my mouth and
Mhm.
talk. It's a crazy thing. And they're like, "No, no, don't do that." And the first thing I learned was I had a 1% chance of saving my leg from amputation. And the doctor said, "We're so sorry. We're going to have to amputate." And in that moment, I thought, well, wait a minute. You said there's a 1% chance. So there's still a chance. And I want to find a doctor who's willing to take that chance with me.
Mm.
And it took 34 surgeries and months in the hospital, a lot of grit. And by the grace of God, they saved my leg and piece by piece put it back together.
Wow, you must have a lot of pins and rods and things.
A lot of metal in there. And
Mm.
in fact, my whole leg from the knee down and all the way into my toes is made out of metal. And I actually, this is kind of a crazy thing, but I actually have a wind chime that I made outside. And I had broken some titanium about a year after. And the doctors had to go in and perform a 12-hour surgery to take the broken titanium out and put a steel rod in.
Mm.
And I kept calling pathology and I was like, "Excuse me, I want that metal. I want the metal." And they actually gave it to me. And I wanted to make a bracelet for my daughters and me or something cool. Took it to a jeweler. They're like, "We can't really bend titanium. It's the hardest metal." And so I thought, well, what can I do? And so my orthopedic surgeon is the one who actually gave me this idea. He said, "Why don't you make a wind chime out of it?" And so it's pretty cool. It reminds me when I hear it of just how powerful the human spirit is and
Mhm.
how blessed I am to be able to walk when I was told I'd be wheelchair bound forever after this accident.
Wow. It's kind of amazing. And so you basically went on to become this peak performance coach, TEDx speaker, a podcaster, and really a leading expert in the field of resiliency and transformation, author of True Grit and Grace. But it's so this changed your life, right? This experience, you had a successful business, but this was the pivot towards what your dharma or your purpose would then be. But I do know from your story that you live with CRPS, which is complex regional pain
Mhm.
syndrome. So would you tell us a little bit about that? And I mean, do you still have it? Is it something that's just chronic that you have to deal with?
Yes, I still have it, and thank you for asking about that. In fact, this morning at 7 a.m., I had someone at the house, and oh my goodness, she took about 13 vials of blood. So it is a condition that I still live with. And, imagine I was thinking that the pain's going to get better. I'll do physical therapy and I'll be as healthy as I can mentally, physically, spiritually, and things will get better. Only the pain wasn't getting better. And so I
Mhm.
went in for this checkup, and the doctor looked at me and he said, "You've got something very serious." And I was kind of like, yeah, I got hit by an SUV. It's pretty serious. But look, I'm on crutches. I'm out of my wheelchair. Like, aren't you proud of me? And he's like, "No, you don't understand." He did an exam and he said, "There's no cure for this. It's something you're going to live with for the rest of your life. You're going to be permanently disabled. You need to go back and get in your wheelchair." And I was like, "Okay, well, for how long?" And he said, "Forever." And I just burst into tears. I felt like I had been given a life sentence. And I didn't go back home and get in my wheelchair. Instead, I went home, changed into my workout clothes, and went to physical therapy. And my physical therapist was like, Amberly, it's Saturday. You don't have an appointment today. What are you doing here? And I said, I know I don't, Terry. I said, but I have just learned something and I am going to have to work harder than I've ever worked before if I want to have the life that I've always imagined. I did not know how hard that was going to be. I mean, this
Mm.
condition, like I said, is ranked highest on the pain scale. It's dubbed the suicide disease
Right.
because you're in constant pain all the time. And in fact, before we got on this call, I was telling my husband, I was like, oh my goodness, today I have a little bit more brain fog. When I have more pain, it
Mhm.
sometimes makes me foggy. And then I get into this feeling of anxious, I'll get anxiety, like how bad is it going to be? Am I going to sound completely ridiculous? I
Right.
honor you and your show so much, and I want to show up and do a great job for your audience
Mhm.
and your people and for you. And so I have to get out of the place of worrying and just focus on doing my best in the moment. And it has been such a crazy, wild ride with my health. I mean, $2.9 million dollars worth of medical expenses. I've had Eastern, Western medicine. In fact, my husband came out and saw them taking blood at the house this morning. He's like, well, what are you doing now? I'm like, I'm trying to see how I can be my healthiest. So I am still striving every day to
Mhm.
figure out how I can live my healthiest life. And I've had to change everything because none of the medications were working. At one point, I was on 73 homeopathic pills and 11 different prescription medications at one time. I even had this thing where they put a spinal stimulator in my back. They put these leads in your spine
Mhm.
to try to reboot your nervous system. I had ketamine infusions, and I'd never done a drug in my life. And now all of a sudden, I'm on opioids. I'm on like serious, serious heavy doses of medication. And when none of it worked, that led me into trying to self medicate. And so I started drinking. And so I thought, how did a good girl like me end up
Mhm.
like this, where I had become a full blown alcoholic and spiraled
Mhm.
down into being from this healthy, fit, doing fitness videos, having this, incredibly successful business. I was the main breadwinner to now I was out of work. I didn't know what my next options were. And I had to get into radical, radical acceptance and take accountability for what I was doing. And
Mhm.
that took so much courage to admit that I had a problem because I was basically hiding it from the world. On the inside, I felt like I was dying. On the outside, I was trying to show up and pretend like I wasn't in pain and pretend like nothing was wrong and hiding my drinking from everyone. I mean, I wasn't
Mhm.
hiding it very well, obviously, but hiding it from my own husband, who is well, he's retired now, but a lieutenant commander with a highway patrol, which was no easy task to do. But when I really took a good hard look at my life, and I think that's where real transformation starts, is when we can
Mhm.
take a look at our life, what's working for us, what's not working for us, and start to make some real improvements by taking action steps every single day. And for me, that was and still is one day at a time, one thing at a time. And slowly but surely, my life started to get better.
Yeah, recovery is a real thing. I stopped drinking when I was in my early 20s, and I was just interviewing someone else about his recovery journey, about how, especially when you're high functioning, how
Hmm.
people don't know. And even if took a lot of energy for you to hide it from your husband, you probably successfully did for quite a long time. Like, there's a lot of sort of cleverness. If you have an addictive personality,
Hmm.
you're sort of protecting that above all until you hit that tipping point, which it sounds like you hit, where you go, I don't want to live like this. And there's got to be something better I could be doing with my one
Hmm.
and only amazing life that I managed to save my leg. I managed to, I'm dealing with all this pain. So then you shifted into really inspiring others. So share with us about, like, what are you lit up about doing now? How was your book received? I know it was received well, but were people telling you their stories? Like, what was the response to you sharing this really hardcore journey that you had?
Well, it was scary. I'm gonna be honest with you. It was scary, and in moments when I was writing my book, I would think, "Who who do I think I am? Like, why am I doing this? Who cares about my story? Like, is this really gonna help?" And I had to get out of my ego and focus on who I really wanted to impact. And that helped me to continue to write. And it was very cathartic. And it took me 2 years to write it because I was still in and out of surgeries, and I actually got sober in the middle of writing my book. And I think it was because so much of what I was writing about, I thought I had done therapy. I thought I had healed. I thought I'd read all the books, done all the self development. And there's something really cathartic when you are writing. What for me was one of the hardest things I have been through was sexual abuse as a child. And so I remember when the box of books came and my husband read the back of the book and where it tells like a little bit about the book. And he says, survivor of sexual abuse. And he's like, did, did you know they wrote on the back of your book, survivor of sexual abuse? I'm like, yeah, honey, I write about it in the book. Maybe you should read it. And he's like, oh my gosh, you're really going to tell everybody about that? And everybody's going to know. And then, of course, I start thinking, oh my gosh, all the PTA moms are going to know. Like everybody's going to know my biggest, darkest secrets.
Hmm.
But I mean, I've heard this phrase before and it really hits home that we are only as sick as our secrets.
Correct.
And so when we are in acceptance for everything that we've done, mistakes and all, it's like when I got into acceptance for even things that had happened to me, it's like they lost the control. It doesn't mean that I'm letting them define me.
Hmm.
It just shows me that, oh, well, yes, this happened, but there are things that I can do that doesn't mean I have to walk in shame for the rest of my life because I was sexually abused. And I think that's one of the reasons I started drinking was it all got to be so heavy. And I'm so glad that I did write about
Hmm.
sexual abuse, about domestic abuse, about pain and other painful things and how I got through them in the book because one of the most rewarding things that I have had people reach out and tell me is, oh my goodness, there was a guy, he was going to commit suicide. And he said, Amberly, I just kept hearing your voice and it's kept me alive. I had another lady who was like, me too. I was sexually abused too. And it's the first time I've ever been able to tell anyone about it. And I feel like I can let go of that shame. And then I had no idea that my book would impact so many people with their scars because I used to have so much shame about the way that I looked. I mean, I hated myself, and hate's a four-letter word in our family, but I hated
Hmm.
the way that I looked. I didn't want anybody to see my deformed leg. And it was when I just started to be willing to try and look at it different, to shift my
Hmm.
perspective with gratitude, to be willing to love and appreciate my leg and myself every day, things started to change. Then one day I was able to wear shorts again and I was proud of my scars because they reminded me of all that I had gone through and all that I had overcome. And one of the most rewarding things is I've had people reach out that have had double mastectomies or they have scars that they've always been ashamed of. And they're like, wow, you showing your scars
Hmm.
has given me permission. I feel like I can show mine now and own my story and my journey. And it's beautiful to see when other women do the same thing.
It's funny because I think one of the first posts that I saw that really attracted me to your work was one where you're working out and we can see your leg, and you had written something about it. And I just thought how liberating that is, and how there's something that is so, when we don't hold shame,
Hmm.
it's like you have become this inspiration. It's like you spark inspiration. When we have a lot of shame, it's almost like we can spark that in people too when we feel like we should be ashamed. Think about sexual abuse from this point of view. As survivors, anyone who's survivors, we take it on like shame,
Mhm.
when who should actually fucking be ashamed is the perpetrator, obviously.
Mhm.
Like, and who deserves compassion is anyone who's been victimized and who
Mhm.
deserves to be seen and whose story deserves to be known. So there's something, Amberly, so beautiful about you getting to that tipping point in your own life where you just decided that shame was just not going to be a part of the going forward and of what you were doing, and that you were going to keep going, but to inspire others. You can't say, do what I say and not what I do, right? So it's almost like I think that probably your stuff really started resonating so much with others when you were walking and talking it and really feeling it. Like, there's nothing like this. My leg, they said they were going to take it away, that they should chop it off, but you didn't let them. And
Mhm.
to be willing to go through the extreme pain that you've been through and that you're still in order to have it be the way you wanted it to be. You took that 1% and you were like, that's a chance. And for me, that's very inspirational because nothing is guaranteed, you know?
Mhm.
But that little glimpse, you had a little teeny, teeny, teeny sliver of hope when the doctor said there's a 1% chance, perhaps, that we could save it. And another thing that I think is a big takeaway, Amberly, of your incredible story is that you are the boss of you. Like, we are fully responsible for our happiness, our health, but actually our health. And that
Mhm.
even though you will have medical professionals, because I had a different but similar experience with a cancer journey where, they're saying one thing and I'm saying something else. And the something else was the thing that was the right thing to do ultimately. Where my takeaway is that we are ultimately responsible, and that many of us were raised as good girls, as you said, to like, the doctor knows and respect police and the teacher's this and that, giving away our power. And for you to be able to go with your gut in that moment, that does speak to true grit, but it speaks to the resiliency of your human spirit. Because
Mhm.
it wasn't just there's a 1% chance and they're going to do it for me. There's a 1% chance and I'm going to have 37 or 34 operations. Like, there's a
Mhm.
1% chance and I'm going to be in physical therapy for the next like 15 years. So it was you actually doing the work. So when you work with clients, do you work with all walks of types of clients? Like, what type of clients are you working with at this point?
Well, you know what? After my accident, I really tried to go back to training clients
Mhm.
because I love fitness. I started teaching dance at age 13, and I went from teaching dance to then training clients and did that for 26 years. And I was kind of killing myself trying to be on my leg training clients. And I proved to myself that, okay, I can do this. But when I get home, I would be in so much pain. I wasn't in much
Mm.
use for my family, for myself. And it was one
Mhm.
day that I was at the gym and I'd had a surgery and the stitches had busted and I was bleeding out on the gym floor. And my husband happened to be at the gym and he's like, "What are you doing? Like, this is insane. This is insanity what you're doing.
Right.
Like, you need to stop." And so it took that
Mm.
extreme moment for me to go, "Okay, well, what else can I do?" And I stopped. And I think this is something we all have to do is sometimes really go, okay, well, what brings you joy? What is it that you love doing? For me, I love working with people. I love when I can see that transformation in them. I love when I can see women, especially, rise. I mean, I love men too, but I love working with women. And
Mm.
so I went from fitness clients, and I actually still have a client that I've had for 20 years just because I love her. I can't let her go. She could work out on her own, but I still train her. And believe it or not, I started coaching women that were coming to me about how can they build their business? How can they level
Mhm.
up? And I feel so blessed that I get to do this work. In fact,
Mhm.
yesterday I got off of a coaching call and I told my husband, I was like, can you believe I get to do this work like I love? And what I did is I just started listening to the questions that people asked me over and over and over
Mhm.
about how do you write a book? How are you getting booked for all these stages? How did you start your podcast? How did
Right.
you build your Instagram from nothing? Because literally like 6 years ago, I had a couple of hundred followers and I
Mhm.
was committed when I had this publisher say, "We don't do any branding or marketing for you. If you want to do that, you'll have to do it yourself." And I was like, okay, I don't have much money. So what can I do for free? And it was social
Mhm.
media. And so now all the women that ask me these questions, I've
Mhm.
put together a mastermind called Unstoppable Life Mastermind, where I go in and I basically open up my playbook and I'm like, this is what to do. This is what not to do. Like I've made so many mistakes along the way. I've failed. And those have been such great opportunities for me to now share so others can time collapse their journey. Because, like I
Mhm.
said, I didn't own a computer, I didn't know how to do social media. And my book was released, oh my goodness, when I was 46. I didn't do my TED
Mhm.
talk until I was 48. And so, anybody listening and you're like, you have a book inside you, or you're thinking of pivoting your career, I'm just here to say you're never too old. It's never too late. I used to tell myself I'm not smart enough. But when you have this burning desire in your heart, you got to listen to that, trust the nudges. And then when you have that desire, it doesn't matter if you don't know how to do something. When you have a strong enough why, you will figure out how to do it, but it just takes grit, consistency, and
Yep.
circling back to what's your why? Why are you doing it? Why did you start? Because being a kind of type A, kind of overachiever, I love what I do, and sometimes I'm like, okay, Amberly, you got to stop. Stop working, especially when I have a home office. But
Mhm.
I love working with women, and I mean, I feel so blessed that
Right.
I get to do this. And I
Mhm.
just had a message from one of the ladies who attended my in-person mastermind meetup, and she said, Amberly, I've never experienced, and I saved this voice memo and I was like, thank you for making my day. But her name's Samantha Joy, and she reached out to me and she's like, Amberly, I have never experienced the love and just the way that the quality of women that you brought together. Like, usually you go to an event and it dies down, people don't talk as much anymore.
Mhm.
I put together a group chat through DMs on Instagram and it's on fire. People are so collaborative and they're supportive, and it's just beautiful to see.
Mhm.
I love connecting people. I love when I mean, there's not a lot of things that I can say I'm really good at this, but I am a super like really good connector.
Yeah. That's an amazing skill. So, the book, you guys, is True Grit and Grace: Turning Tragedy into Triumph. The author and inspirational, now new friend, is Amberly Lago. Where can people find you, Amberly? Where's the best place?
Oh, well, you know what? You can reach out to me at amberlylago.com. Instagram is Amberly Lago Motivation. And I would love if you screenshotted however you're listening to this amazing podcast. And if you tag me and Terry,
And
when I
me.
see it, that I will share that. But I want all my friends on Instagram to find you. So I'll definitely be shouting this episode off the rooftops and just
Right
appreciate
on.
you having me on.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you and your journey. We will have to do it again.